Welcome to the sleep paralysis tapes. Settle into the dark, pull the covers close, and let the heavy silence fill your room. Tonight, we descend into chilling tales of the unexplained. Before the screen fades to pitch black, I invite you to become part of this archive. If you have your own terrifying encounters, please contact me and I will narrate your story in a future tape. If these shadows bring you comfort, please like, subscribe, and tap the bell. Now, close your eyes. Do not look at the foot of your bed. Just listen and let us begin. The human brain at rest is predictable. It follows a rhythm, a quiet electrical tide that can be measured and understood. This is the fundamental truth of David Chen's world. He works the night shift at the St. Vincent's Sleep Disorder Center. His kingdom is a dim room lit only by the glow of 8 monitors. The air hums with the low, constant frequency of the equipment. It is a sound of pure routine. David knows the routine by heart. He arrives at 9 p.m. He reviews the files. He meets the patients one by one. His hands are steady. His voice is a practiced calm. He applies the electrodes. He secures the EKG leads to the chest. He fits the breathing belts around the rib cage and abdomen. It is a ritual of wires and paste, a ceremony of data collection. By 11, the patients are in their sound-dampened rooms. They are asleep, or trying to be. On David's central console, their minds become light. Squiggling lines on a screen. Each wave has a name and a meaning. Alpha for quiet wakefulness. The slow rolling delta of deep sleep. The rapid, chaotic scribble of REM. But David spends most of his night in stage 2. Non-REM sleep. The long, quiet stretches of the night. On the monitor, it has a signature. Sleep spindles. Brief bursts of rhythmic brainwave like a finger tapping a key. And K complexes. Large, slow waves that spike and fall. A brain dismissing a sound, adjusting a blanket, defending its silence. To anyone else, it is a meaningless scrolling graph. To David, it is a language. He reads the spindles. He tracks the K complexes. He notes the heart rate and the breath. He logs the limb movements. The data is a story of ordinary rest, or the lack of it. He watches the clock. 2 a.m., then 3. The hospital outside the window grows quieter. The hum of the equipment is the only constant. This was David Chen's normal for 7 years. The meticulous cataloging of the unconscious. The rhythm of the normal brain in the normal night in a very normal room. He believed he was just an observer, a man reading a predictable electrical tide. He was wrong. The pattern, when it came, didn't look like a spindle or a K complex. It didn't look like anything he had ever seen, and by then it was far too late to look away. It happened on a Tuesday, during a routine review. David was scrolling back through the recording of patient 723. It was a standard case, mild sleep apnea. The brainwave trace was a steady, predictable river of data, until it wasn't. At 2:17 a.m., the C4 channel erupted. It wasn't a normal sleep spindle. It wasn't a K complex. It was a violent, rhythmic spike train, a frantic, jagged scribble. It lasted exactly 14 seconds. Then, it fell. The brainwave didn't return to baseline. It dropped into a flat, shallow trough. The signal fell below 5 microvolts. For 3 full minutes. It was a near flatline in the middle of stable sleep. David leaned back in his chair. He rubbed his eyes. A lead had probably popped loose. An electrode coming off. A faulty amplifier. These things happened. He ran the full system diagnostic, every channel, every check. He reviewed the calibration logs from that night. All green, all normal. He marked the anomaly as a probable artifact. Unusable data. He closed the study and moved on. A week passed. He was reviewing patient 730. Different equipment, a different set of electrodes. The clock on the recording read 1:55 a.m. Stable sleep. Everything normal. Then the spike train began. David's hand froze. It was identical. The same frantic 4 to 6 hertz rhythm. The same 14-second duration. The same violent climb. Then the same sudden drop into a suppressed signal. He watched the timer. 1 minute, 2, 3. Exactly. Then the patient's heart rate spiked. A micro-arousal. Then back to a normal sleep pattern, as if nothing had happened. But something had. David pulled up the first file. Patient 720. 3. He put the two waveforms side by side. They were a perfect match. His professional concern began to curdle. It turned into something colder. A quiet, meticulous curiosity. 2 different people, 2 different rooms. One identical, impossible pattern in their sleep. A glitch doesn't repeat. Not like that. He sat in the hum of the monitoring station. The glow of the 2 identical anomalies washed over him. He was no longer just reading the quiet tide of sleep. He had found something underneath it, something that had a shape. And learning that shape changed everything. A curiosity had become an investigation. David Chen stayed late. He began a systematic audit, pulling every study from the past 18 months. That's over 900 files. He wrote a simple algorithm to search for that exact spike train. That specific 3-minute trough. The search ran through the night. It returned 5 more hits. 5 more patients. Different ages, different genders, different medical histories. Rooms 1, 2, 4, 6, and 8. Spread across 14 months. That made 7 patients in total now. All with the same 14 seconds of electrical violence in their sleep. All with the same 3 minutes of silence. A glitch is random. This was not random. This was a pattern, and a pattern implies intent. David opened the clinical notes for each file. He read the physician's follow-up reports, the standard questionnaires, the section labeled patient-reported sleep events. That's where he found the convergence. Patient 723, the first one. The note read, reports vivid dream of a tall, thin man in a gray suit standing at the foot of the bed. Could not see a face. Felt paralyzed. Patient 730, the second. Described a nightmare figure. A man in a wrinkled suit, no facial features, stood motionless. He read the third, then the fourth. His breath grew quiet. The descriptions weren't just similar. They were identical in their specifics. A tall, thin man, a gray suit, specifically wrinkled. An absence of a face. A feeling of being watched, of being paralyzed. The 5th patient used the word faceless. The 6th said the suit was the color of old ash. The 7th patient was a 68-year-old retired schoolteacher. Her note was the most chilling. It was a direct quote. He wasn't dreaming me. I was dreaming him. And he knew it. David sat back. The hum of the equipment filled the silence. His hands were steady on the desk, but his mind was fracturing. 2 data points could be a fluke. 7 was a phenomenon. The objective and the subjective had met in the dark. A unique, horrific brainwave pattern was now a biometric signature. It was the clinical record of a supernatural event. The spike train was the door opening. The 3-minute flatline was the thing coming through. And the nightmare was what it looked like. He believed he was recording the language of the brain. He was not. He had been recording a visitor. And the visitor always wore the same suit. The pattern had a shape. And now it had a face, or rather, the terrifying absence of one. David closed all the files. The room felt colder. The routine of the night was gone, replaced by a new, terrible understanding. He was no longer studying sleep. He was cataloging an infestation. He could not look away. Not now. The pattern appeared again 2 weeks later. Patient 738. Room 3, a live feed. David saw it begin at 1:43 a.m. The stable, stage 2, the spindles. Then the first spike on the C4 channel. The frantic, rhythmic climb. It was happening right now. Protocol said he should note the event. He should page the on-call resident. He did neither. He turned the lock on the monitoring station door. The soft click echoed in the humming dock. He pulled the camera feed for room 3 onto his main screen. He split it with the EEG trace. He would watch both. On the left, the brainwave exploded into a 14-second seizure. On the right, the patient lay perfectly still. A man in his 50s, on his back. David's eyes flickered between the two. The electrical storm, the physical calm. It was a disconnect that made his skin cold. The 14 seconds ended. The wave crashed into a 3-minute trough. The line went shallow and flat, a sleeping brain that was almost not there. On the video, nothing changed. David leaned forward. His breath fogged the screen. He examined every pixel of the patient's room. The empty chair, the closed door. The heart rate on the EKG was steady, too steady. Then he saw it. Not in the bed, on the wall. The infrared light cast sharp, angular shadows. The shadow of the bed's headboard was a dark rectangle on the wall. And just to the left of it was another shadow. It was tall and thin, the distinct silhouette of a man standing, the blunt shape of a suit jacket, the narrow cut of trousers. It was cast on the wall behind the sleeping patient, as if a man stood between the bed and the light. But there was no man in the room. David's hand went to the mouse. He toggled the camera view, wide angle. No change. The shadow remained, a solid, impossible shape. It had no source. The 3-minute mark approached. The patient's heart rate began to climb. A micro-arousal. The brain was coming back. On the video, the patient's legs twitched. His eyes snapped open in the green gloom. He screamed, a silent, open-mouthed cry. His body arched against the restraints of the wires, and in that second, as the man woke, David saw it. The shadow on the wall moved. It didn't walk. It didn't fade. It simply was there, and then it was not. A shutter click of absence. On the EEG, the trace returned to a normal, startled rhythm. The event was over. In room 3, a man was sobbing, pulling at his electrodes, pointing a trembling finger at the empty corner. David sat frozen. He had the proof. It wasn't in the brainwave. It was on the wall. The visitor didn't just exist in the electrical silence of the mind. It cast a shadow in the real world, and David had watched it happen. The morning light felt like a violation. David Chen sat in the lab director's office. He presented the printouts. He showed the side-by-side comparisons. He described the shadow. Dr. Armitage listened with a polite, clinical frown. He tapped the EEG traces. Classic artifact cluster, David. Maybe a grounding issue in the building's wiring. We'll run an audit. The audit took all day. Engineers checked the electrical panels. They tested every amplifier and every lead. They found nothing. The director's conclusion was a quiet dismissal. You've been working too many nights. The mind sees patterns, even where there are none. David returned to his desk at the empty monitoring station. The night shift wouldn't start for hours. He wanted to believe the audit. He wanted the closure of a faulty wire. That's when he saw it. A single piece of paper, torn from a prescription pad. It was placed squarely in the center of his keyboard. The handwriting wasn't familiar. It was a tight, angular script, just 2 words. "You shouldn't watch." He stared at it. The hum of the computers was the only sound. He checked the door. It was still locked from the inside as he'd left it. No one had come in. The note was impossible. He picked it up. The paper was cold. For the next 2 weeks, he watched the monitors with a new kind of focus, a desperate vigilance. He reviewed every study. He ran the algorithm every morning. The pattern never appeared again. Not a single spike train, not a single trough. The phenomenon had stopped as cleanly as a switched circuit. There was a relief in it. A false summer. The director's explanation began to seem plausible, even to David. An artifact, an overworked mind. The note was just a prank by a day shift nurse with poor timing. He almost convinced himself. That night, he stood in his bathroom. The house was silent. He leaned over the sink, splashing water on his face. He reached for the towel. He caught his own tired reflection in the mirror. The familiar face. The dark circles under his eyes. And just behind his shoulder, in the blurred edge of the glass, a shape. The gray fabric of a suit jacket. The hint of a shoulder. It was there for less than a second. A smudge in the steam. David froze. His hand tightened on the towel. He didn't turn around. He knew what he would see. Nothing. He kept his eyes locked on the mirror, on the empty space behind him. His own reflection stared back, pale and wide-eyed. The relief was gone. The false summer was over. The pattern hadn't disappeared. It had simply changed its venue. It was no longer in the sleep lab. It was here. With him. Medical leave was a form of surrender. David Chen did not sleep. He tried. But the paralysis would come. It pinned him to his own bed. In the dark, he would feel a weight in the corner of the room. The shape of a suit in the negative space. He learned not to open his eyes. He knew what he would see. The figure had left the lab. It had followed him home. It lived in reflections now. A coffee pot's curved surface. A dark television screen. The window at 3 a.m. It was always in the periphery. A gray smudge over his shoulder, gone when he turned his head. He stopped looking in mirrors. After 2 weeks, he requested a transfer. The hospital administration approved it quietly. Dr. Armitage did not object. David moved to the cardiology department. Day shift. A world of fluorescent light and steady rhythms. He traded brain waves for heartbeats. The EKG traces were reassuring. They followed rules. They made sense. He became a model technician. Quiet. Thorough. He applied the leads with the same steady hands. But he kept his eyes down. He avoided the glossy black bezels of the monitors. He never looked at the dark windows after sunset. This was his new routine, a careful, deliberate life in the daylight. He almost believed he had left it behind. Almost. It was a Tuesday afternoon, room 4 of the cardiology wing. David was preparing a patient for a stress test. An older man. The room was bright and clinical. The air hummed with the sound of a treadmill. David attached the final EKG lead to the man's chest. He turned to the monitoring cart to check the signal. On the digital display, the heartbeat traced a regular green line, a perfect sinus rhythm. Everything was normal, but David's gaze flickered upward to the dark, glassy surface of the monitor itself. It was like looking into a still, black pool, and in that reflection, clear behind his own shoulder, was the blurred shape of a suit jacket, the gray of old ash, the wrinkle of fabric at the elbow. It did not move. It simply was. David's hands went still on the keyboard. He did not turn around. He knew the room behind him was empty. He held his breath. The only sound was the steady beep of the heart monitor. A rhythm of life. In the glass, the reflection remained. Then the patient coughed. The sound broke the stillness. David blinked. The reflection was gone. Only his own pale face stared back from the dark screen. He finished the setup. His movements were automatic. His voice was calm as he explained the procedure to the patient. But he understood now. The pattern had not been in the machines, it had been in the seeing, and he had seen it. He was no longer the technician, he was the study, a permanent subject in an ongoing observation. He goes home. He tries to sleep. He avoids mirrors. He checks every reflective surface, and sometimes, in the corner of his eye, he sees it. A tall, thin shape, the color of a forgotten suit. It is always there, just behind him, in the quiet hum of his own waking life. Some patterns, once learned, cannot be unlearned. They become the only thing you see, even when you close your eyes. The tape has reached its end. I hope the stories tonight brought a pleasant chill to your spine as you drifted further into the dark. Thank you for braving the shadows here at the Sleep Paralysis tapes. If you are still awake, lying still in the quiet, remember to contact me with your own unsettling encounters so they can be added to our growing archive. As my voice fades away, let the silence of your room wrap around you completely. May your sleep be undisturbed, your doors remain locked, and your morning arrive safely. Until we open the tapes again, good night.